Militant resistance. I am writing this essay sitting beside an anonymous white male that I long to murder. We have just been involved in an incident on an airplane where Kay, my friend and traveling companion, has been called to the front of the plane and publicly attacked by white female stewardesses who accuse her of trying to occupy a seat in first class that is not assigned to her. Although she had been assigned the seat, she was not given the appropriate boarding pass. When she tries to explain, they ignore her. They keep explaining to her in loud voices as though she is a child, as though she is a foreigner who does not speak airline English, that she must take another seat. They do not want to know that the airline has made a mistake. They want only to ensure that the white male who has the appropriate boarding card will have a seat in first class. Realizing our powerlessness to alter the moment we take our seats, Kay moves to coach, and I take my seat next to the anonymous white man who quickly apologizes to Kay as she moves her bag from the seat he was comfortably settled in. I stare him down with rage, tell him that I do not want to hear his liberal apologies, his repeated insistence that it was not his fault. I am shouting at him that it is not a question of blame, that the mistake was understandable, but that the way Kay was treated was completely unacceptable, that it reflected both racism and sexism. He let me know in no uncertain terms that he felt his apology was enough, that I should leave him be to sit back and enjoy his flight. In no uncertain terms, I let him know that he had an opportunity to not be complicit with the racism and sexism that is so all-pervasive in this society, that he knew no white man would have been called on the loudspeaker to come to the front of the plane while another white male took his seat, a fact that he never disputed. Yelling at him, I said, "It was not a question of your giving up the seat. It was an occasion for you to intervene in the harassment of a black woman, and you chose your own comfort and tried to deflect away from your complicity in that choice by offering an insincere, face-saving apology." From the moment Kay and I hailed a cab on the New York City street that afternoon, we were confronting racism. The cabbie wanted us to leave his taxi and take another. He did not want to drive to the airport. When I said that I would willingly leave, but also report him, he agreed to take us. Kay suggested we just get another cab. We faced similar hostility when we stood in the first-class line at the airport. Ready with our coupon upgrades, we were greeted by two young white airline employees who continued their personal conversation and acted as though it were a great interruption to serve us. When I tried to explain that we had upgrade coupons, I was told by the white male that he was not talking to me. It was not clear why they were so hostile. When I suggested to Kay that I never see white males receiving such treatment in the first-class line, the white female insisted that race had nothing to do with it, that she was just trying to serve us as quickly as possible. I noted that as a line of white men stood behind us, they were indeed eager to complete our transaction, even if it meant showing no courtesy. Even when I requested to speak with a supervisor, shutting down that inner voice which urged me not to make fuss, not to complain, and possibly make life more difficult for the other black folks who would have to seek service from these two, the white attendants discussed together whether they would honor that request. Finally, the white male called a supervisor. He listened, apologized, stood quietly by as the white female gave us the appropriate service. When she handed me the tickets, I took a cursory look at them to see if it was all in order. Everything seemed fine. Yet she looked at me with a gleam of hatred in her eye that startled. It was so intense. After we reached our gate, I shared with Kay that I should look at the tickets again because I kept seeing that gleam of hatred. Indeed, they had not been done properly. I went back to the counter and asked a helpful black skycap to find the supervisor. Even though he was black, I did not suggest that we had been the victims of racial harassment. I asked him instead if he could think of any reason why these two young white folks were so hostile. Though I have always been concerned about class elitism and hesitate to make complaints about individuals who work long hours at often unrewarding jobs that require them to serve the public, I felt our complaint was justified. It was a case of racial harassment, and I was compelled to complain because I feel that the vast majority of black folks who are subjected daily to forms of racial harassment have accepted this as one of the social conditions of our life in white supremacist patriarchy that we cannot change. This acceptance is a form of complicity. I left the counter feeling better, not feeling that I had possibly made it worse for the black folks who might come after me, but that maybe these young white folks would have to rethink their behaviors if enough folks complained. We were reminded of this incident when we boarded the plane and a black woman passenger arrived to take her seat in coach. Only the white man sitting there refused to move. He did not have the correct boarding pass. She did. Yet he was not called to the front. No one compelled him to move, as was done a few minutes later with my friend Kay. The very embarrassed black woman passenger kept repeating in a soft voice, "I am willing to sit anywhere," she said elsewhere. It was these sequences of radicalized incidents involving black women that intensified my rage against the white man sitting next to me. I felt a killing rage. I wanted to stab him softly, to shoot him with the gun I wish I had in my purse. And as I watched his pain, I would say to him tenderly, "Racism hurts." With no outlet, my rage turned to overwhelming grief, and I began to weep, covering my face with my hands. All around me, everyone acted as though they could not see me, as though I were invisible, with one exception. The white man seated next to me watched suspiciously whenever I reached for my purse, as though I were the black nightmare that haunted his dreams. He seemed to be waiting for me to strike, to be the fulfillment of his racist imagination. I leaned towards him with my legal pad and made sure he saw the title written in bold print, Killing Rage. In the course on black women novelists that I have been teaching this semester at City University, we have focused again and again on the question of black rage. We began the semester reading Harriet Jacobs' autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, asking ourselves, where is the rage? In the graduate seminar I teach on Toni Morrison, we pondered whether black folks and white folks can ever be subjects together if white people remain unable to hear black rage. If it is the sound of that rage, which must always remain repressed, contained, trapped in the realm of the unspeakable. In Morrison's first novel, The Bluest Eye, her narrator says of the dehumanized, colonized little black girl, Pecola, that there would be hope for her if only she could express her rage, telling readers anger is better. There is a presence in anger. Perhaps then it is that presence, the assertion of subjectivity colonizers do not want to see, that surfaces when the colonized express rage. In these times, most folks associate black rage with the underclass, with desperate and despairing black youth who in their hopelessness feel no need to silence unwanted passions. Those of us black folks who have made it have, for the most part, become skilled at repressing our rage. We do what Anne Petry's heroine tells us we must in that prophetic 40s novel about black female rage, The Street. It is Ludi Johnson who exposes the rage underneath the calm persona. She declares, every day we are choking down that rage. In the 90s, it is not just white folks who let black folks know they do not want to hear our rage. It is also the voices of cautious upper-class black academic gatekeepers who assure us that our rage has no place. Even though black psychiatrists William Greer and Price Cobbs could write an entire book called Black Rage, they used their Freudian standpoint to convince readers that rage was merely a sign of powerlessness. They named it pathological, explained it away. They did not urge the larger culture to see black rage as something other than sickness, to see it as a potentially healthy, potentially healing response to oppression and exploitation. In his most recent collection of essays, Race Matters, Cornell West includes the chapter Malcolm X and Black Rage, where he makes rage synonymous with great love for black people. West acknowledges that Malcolm X articulated black rage in a manner unprecedented in American history, yet he does not link that rage to a passion for justice that may not emerge from the context of great love. By collapsing Malcolm's rage and his love, West attempts to explain that rage away, to temper it. Overall, contemporary reassessments of Malcolm X's political career tend to deflect away from killing rage, yet it seems that Malcolm X's passionate ethical commitment to justice served as the catalyst for his rage. That rage was not altered by shifts in his thinking about white folks, racial integration, etc. It is the clear, defiant articulation of that rage that continues to set Malcolm X apart from contemporary black thinkers and leaders who feel that rage has no place in anti-racist struggle. These leaders are often more concerned about their dialogues with white folks, their repression of anger, if and when they feel it, and their silencing of the rage of other black people are the sacrificial offering they make to gain the ear of white listeners. Indeed, black folks who do not feel rage at radical injustice because their own lives are comfortable may feel as fearful of black rage as their white counterparts. Today, degrees and intensities of black rage seem to be overdetermined by the politics of location, by class privilege. I grew up in apartheid South. We learned when we were very little that black people could die from feeling rage and expressing it to the wrong white folks. We learned to choke down our rage. This process of repression was aided by the existence of our separate neighborhoods. In all black schools, churches, juke joints, etc., we granted ourselves the luxury of forgetfulness. Within the comfort of those black spaces, we did not constantly think about white supremacy and its impact on our social status. We lived a large part of our lives not thinking about white folks. We lived in denial. And in living that way, we were able to mute our rage. If black folks did strange, weird, or even brutally cruel acts now and then in our neighborhoods, cut someone to pieces over a card game, shoot somebody for looking at them the wrong way, we did not link this event to the myriad abuses and humiliations black folks suffered daily when we crossed the tracks and did what we had to do with and for whites to make a living. To express rage in that context was suicidal. Every black person knew it. Rage was reserved for life at home, for one another. To perpetuate and maintain white supremacy, white folks have colonized black Americans, and a part of that colonizing process has been teaching us to repress our rage, to never make them the targets of any anger we feel about racism. Most black people internalize this message as well, and though many of us were taught that the repression of our rage was necessary to stay alive in the days before racial integration, we now know that one can be exiled forever from the promise of economic well-being if that rage is not permanently silenced. Lecturing on race and racism all around this country, I am always amazed when I hear white folks speak about their fear of black people, of being the victims of black violence. They may never have spoken to a black person and certainly never been hurt by a black person, but they are convinced that their response to blackness must first and foremost be fear and dread. They too live in denial. They claim to fear that black people will hurt them, even though there is no evidence which suggests that black people routinely hurt white people in this country or any other culture. Despite the fact that many reported crimes are committed by black offenders, this does not happen so frequently as to suggest that all white people must fear any black person. Now black people are routinely assaulted and harassed by white people in white supremacist culture. This violence is condoned by the state. It is necessary for the maintenance of racial difference. Indeed, if black people have not learned our place as second-class citizens through educational institutions, we learn it by the daily assaults perpetuated by white offenders on our bodies and beings that we feel but rarely publicly protest or name. Though we do not live in the same fierce conditions of racial apartheid that only recently ceased being our collective social reality, most black folks believe that if they do not conform to white-determined standards of acceptable behavior, they will not survive. We live in a society where we hear about white folks killing black people to express their rage. We can identify specific incidents throughout our history in this country, whether it be Emmett Till, Bensonhurst, Howard Beach, etc. We can identify rare incidents where individual black folks have randomly responded to their fear of white assault by killing. White rage is acceptable, can be both expressed and condoned, but black rage has no place and everyone knows it. When I first left the apartheid South to attend a predominantly white institution of higher education, I was not in touch with my rage. I had been raised to dream only of racial uplift, of a day when white and black would live together as one. I had been raised to turn the other cheek. However, the fresh air of white liberalism encountered when I went to the West Coast to attend college in the early 70s invited me to let go of some of the terror and mistrust of white people that living in apartheid had bred in me. That terror keeps all rage at bay. I remember my first feelings of political rage against racism. They surfaced within me after I read Fanon, Memmi, Frere. They came as I was reading Malcolm X's autobiography. As Cornel West suggests in his essay, I felt that Malcolm X dared black folks to claim our emotional subjectivity, and that we could do this only by claiming our rage. Like all profound repression, my rage unleashed made me afraid. It forced me to turn my back on forgetfulness, called me out of my denial. It changed my relationship with home, with the South, made it so I could not return there. Inwardly, I felt as though I were a marked woman, a black person unashamed of her rage, using it as a catalyst to develop critical consciousness, to come to full decolonized self-actualization. Had no real place in the existing social structure. I felt like an exile. Friends and professors wondered what had come over me. They shared their fear that this new militancy might consume me. When I journeyed home to see my family, I felt estranged from them. They were suspicious of the new me. The good Southern white folks who had always given me a helping hand began to worry that college was ruining me. I seemed alone in the understanding that I was undergoing a process of radical politicization and self-recovery. Confronting my rage, witnessing the way it moved me to grow and change, I understood intimately that it had the potential not only to destroy but also to construct. Then and now I understand rage to be a necessary aspect of resistance.